Today's guest is my dear friend, Brittany Chibe, CEO and co-founder of Aqua Cultured Foods. Her story starts with a dive trip to the Great Barrier Reef and a heartbreaking first-hand look at ocean collapse. What followed was a mission to build a company that could reduce our pressure on seafood ecosystems without compromising taste, texture, or chef experience. In this conversation, Brittany shares Aqua's founding story, the surprising value it brings to restaurants, and her bold vision for food, climate, and business. I'm your host, Katherine Jelinek, and this is the Expanders Podcast, presented by The Skinny Platform, the place for entrepreneurs with something to share and who want to be heard. Hello, everyone. I'm really excited for this episode today. So today I get to introduce you all to a dear friend, Brittany Chibe, and she is the CEO and co-founder of Aqua Cultured Foods. Brittany, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Katherine. I'm excited too.
Yay. So can you tell us about what Aqua Cultured Foods is first, to just start?
For sure. So we're a seafood alternative, and we make tuna and scallops using a fermentation process, pretty similar to how you would brew beer or make wine. And we are basically taking this fermentation process that's used for thousands of years and using it in a new and different way to grow this really interesting material, which is cellulose. Cellulose is a pure fiber, and texturally it mimics the eating experience of raw seafood. And so we take that product, we shape it and add flavors, and in the case of our tuna, color to mimic different cuts of seafood. So we founded the business in 2020, and it's been a few years now of R&D, getting the regulatory approval, and I'm happy to say that now our product is in the market, and we are continuing to scale up.
So when you say in the market, that means not in stores, but in restaurants.
In restaurants. Yep. In restaurants in Chicago where we're located.
That's wonderful. Can you call out a few of the ones that we could go find it at?
Sure. So we first launched with Mama Delia. So it's a traditional Spanish tapas restaurant in Wicker Park. They had our product in a tuna crudo dish. So they were taking our tuna, cubing it, adding some like umami sauce to it, and then topping it with a fried egg and some crispy potato strings and some scallions. Super delicious. And then we're actually launching next Thursday on June 19th with a new restaurant that's opening up in Chicago called Matilda. So it's a mix of like Mexican, Peruvian inspired dishes. Yes, and that one's in River North.
Oh, how cool.
Yeah.
So tell us about the creation story. Like, how did you even get inspired for this, and where did the idea come from?
Sure. Well, I personally have just a huge passion for the ocean. I started diving back in 2017. I got my PADI certification with my husband. We were looking for something fun that the two of us could do together.
So
And we
cool.
we love it. We decided to we want to be divers and like let's go learn how to do this. And so after we got our PADI certification, we were like, okay, what do we do with this thing now? And we thought, where does one go dive? The Great Barrier Reef. So we flew to Australia.
Wow, that's a flight.
Yeah. Oh my God. It's like 18 hours.
That's a big one.
Yeah, you have to mentally prepare for that trip. But we spent like I think it was like 3 or 4 days diving while we were there. We were there for a couple weeks. And so people had shared ahead of time. Like I had a friend who lived in Australia for a little bit, and he had said, you're really not going to see that much when you're diving because of like all the corals are bleached. But maybe if you go to like the outer reefs, you'll see more, fish life. And I could not fully wrap my head around that and what that all meant. And then when we were there, seeing, this ecosystem firsthand, it just became so heartbreaking. And bleached corals just means they're dead. Like literally there's just skeletons of corals along the reef.
So they're white instead of like pink.
Right. Yeah. And with the dead corals, right, the corals are food for a lot of the smaller fish. With the dead corals, you just start to lose that whole ecosystem, right? Because the smaller fish feed on the corals, the larger fish feed on the smaller fish. So it's just really sad when you just kind of see this dead ecosystem. And then, you compare that to other places we've died, like Mexico, where they've done a lot of coral restoration, and Isla Mujeres, and it's just gorgeous and thriving, and just the colors are unbelievable. And so you just start to question, what is really happening here. And coming home from that trip, I just started to do more research, watch documentaries, just read up and see, like, why is this happening? And the kind of aha moment for me was, is the more I learned about this issue, the more I thought these are all human made problems, right? Like, our oceans are our largest carbon sink. And we are asking the ocean to work overtime right now to basically absorb all of the greenhouse gas emissions that we're emitting in our atmosphere. And nothing can do the job of our oceans. We truly do need them to heal in order to continue to support human life on this planet. And that, coupled with traditional fishing practices, things like bottom trawling and dredging our ocean floor, and things that are just destroying, our ecosystems, it's just so heartbreaking. And I just kept thinking all of this is truly driven by humans, right? And our consumption. And I just kept thinking there's got to be a way to just lessen the pressure on our ocean. And so the idea for Aqua was, how do we take this, what would be a byproduct or waste of another food, and use it
Mm.
to create something that can mimic seafood in terms of, and when I say mimic, it's how do we match the eating experience? So the taste, the texture is really important in seafood. The appearance of it, the use cases for it, how do we match that to give consumers an option? So if consumers are looking to avoid traditional meat or seafood, or avoid mercury or pesticides, or maybe have
Hmm.
an allergen to it, they have an option like Aqua, where they can still experience the same dish as the rest of, right, the people they're out to dinner with, but they don't have to compromise. They don't have to have, a watermelon in place of a piece of tuna. They have something that really can match that whole experience,
Hmm.
and also do something a little bit better for the planet. So our idea is not to replace seafood, but basically offer an option without compromise, so that we lessen our stress on our oceans as a food source. We let the fish stocks get back to more sustainable levels, so that we can really keep seafood on our menus forever, right? It's not something that we want to ever have to replace, and not to have that as an option long term.
Hmm. But adding more options that, get to that flavor and that like experience profile allows for at least some recovery.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Hmm. That's incredible. And are there stats? I'm sure you know stats about like our consumption level of seafood and what's going to be happening in the next few years if we keep it up, or like share with us like what really is going on with consumption and seafood and the impact on the ocean.
Sure. So, in the US, the number one protein consumed is, I think it's actually chicken now. It's like beef, chicken, pork, seafood, not as much. We're just not, it's not really part of our food culture. Versus in Asia, that is their number one protein consumed.
Hmm.
Um, China, for example, consumes about 70% of the global supply of seafood.
Wow.
And
Wow.
so when you think about Asia, having a sustainable seafood source is a matter of national security, right? Food security is national security, and those countries specifically are looking for solutions to support their seafood consumption. I think in the US, because it's not as highly consumed, it's more of a celebratory eating occasion here. We're not feeling the pain as much as the rest of the world in terms of that dwindling supply. But if you think about the proteins we are consuming, we've completely used all of our arable land to support our meat consumption habits. Um,
Hmm.
so we're looking at 8 billion people on our planet right now. And if we're going to be at 10 billion in the next 30 years, we have to do something. We have to have all of these alternative proteins and these food tech solutions really come to fruition in order to continue to support that growing population.
Wow. Hmm. And have you had any opportunity to connect the aqua product to Asia yet, given that there's such a demand over there?
We have actually one of our investors is the largest food company in South Korea.
Wow, amazing.
Yeah, CJ Shiljing, and they participated in our seed round, and they have the brand BBGO. So I don't know if you've seen their BBGO dumplings are at Costco
Yeah,
or
yeah.
grocers. So they invested in Aqua, and we've looked at ways to collaborate. We're just not at the size and scale yet to support what they would need to be able to
Mhm.
really do something with our product. But for example, they have shrimp dumplings and fish balls and all of these different products that use seafood. And so they're looking for, solutions long term because they are understanding, right, as we continue to deplete the supply, the price goes up, and it becomes unsustainable.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, in the restaurants that you are in, what have the responses been of like customers and the chefs and everything?
It's been so amazing. So, it's one of those things like you work on something for so long and then you can point to this restaurant or this menu item and like that's our product, that's what we've done, that's what we've created. So the response at Mama Delia was fascinating to me because you have an idea in your head of what your value propositions are, right? When you're spending all this time, you're in the weeds, you're developing this thing, you're creating it, you're thinking about your go to market, you talk to all these consumers, and then it's in market and you learn so much more about your product. So we went to market thinking, our value prop is matching that taste, the texture, the eating experience of traditional raw seafood without allergens. You don't have to train the back of house team. You can tell your back of house treat the aqua product just as you would raw seafood, right? There's no learning curve like there was with Impossible or Beyond.
Sure.
And there's no allergens. You don't have to worry about cross contamination, right? All of these things we thought were our benefit. And price, like we can match or undercut the price of the traditional species that we're mimicking. And then when we launched at Mama Delia, the chef there actually removed tuna from his menu. And so we went on the menu thinking we were going to be that, sort of vegan option. And they actually made the aqua tuna product the dish. So it was aqua atún crudo. And the chef took real tuna off the menu. So, of course, I'm so curious. I have to know why. And so,
Mhm.
just in talking with him, it was so eye opening to me and unlocked all of these other value propositions I never considered, which were, the aqua tuna product gave the restaurant a consistent, stable supply, a consistent quality, and basically eliminating price volatility from the market. And I just thought that was so fascinating because when you think about running a restaurant, you're already operating on very thin margins, right? And thinking about, seafood is like the market price. Like we talk to seafood distributors and they have daily price lists that they send out to their customers daily. And so
Mhm.
trying to manage that volatility, you don't have enough time to react. You can't change the menu price. You can't really pass that along to the consumer. And so you could be losing money on the dish week after week. And that supply and quality is a big thing to the restaurant too, because basically the way the chef explained it to me was for a restaurant, and I think for any business, consistency is key. So consistency in terms of, the atmosphere, the ambiance, the server, who you interact with, the dishes, the drinks, like the whole experience. If you give someone that consistent experience, they know what to expect and they'll continue to come back. And with traditional tuna, they would have like mediocre quality one week and people would send the dish back, right? It would be like
Mhm.
tough or fatty or you get the like stringy bits from
Yes, I've had that
yeah,
before.
like
Poke bowls that just aren't the best. Yeah.
yeah, and you also have a really short shelf life. So traditional seafood raw has like 1 to 2 days max to use it before it starts to turn a little bit like grayish in color. It starts to smell. And so their customers would send the dish back. And so the chef had said, we're not getting quality complaints. We're selling more of the dish because it's fresher. We have a 3-week shelf life. It's fresher for longer. And with that, we also reduce a lot of risk in food waste in the restaurant's operation. So it was just all of these little nuggets of information that helped us realize, okay, our value prop is so much bigger than matching an eating experience or undercutting a price. It's all of these other things we can deliver on, that we just would never have known until we got to market.
Wow. And how many variables you kind of help neutralize
Hmm.
for the restaurant and the restaurant owner and the chef. And the fact
Hmm.
that like so much about seafood is what you just explained, like the market price moving so quickly, the fact that the shelf life is low, there's an inconsistency in the product depending on the season and the shelf and all the things. So
Yeah.
that's amazing that you're offering those. I mean, what's going through my head is I got to interview John Perkins a few episodes ago, and he brought this concept that I loved so much up about life economy versus death economy. And that in the Western world, we really need to like lean into supporting things that are examples of the life economy. Your company is an example of that, where more and more of what you're offering will only support sustainability and life on this planet. Whereas some of the greed and materialistic overconsumption habits that are unfortunately hardwired into all of us in one way or another, that's a part of the death economy. And it's just interesting to see how can we lean into things that we love that are life economy. You're one of those examples, and it's so cool too to hear about how, what you're learning, where it's not like you're not a part of capitalism,
Right.
and that there's not like price benefits and other benefits for restaurants in engaging. It doesn't have to just be from the heart, but it aligns with the heart, which is so cool.
Totally. I love that. I mean, the way that I describe it is Aqua is a climate solution and a business solution,
There you go.
right?
Yeah.
And it's just echoing what you just said. And I think it's so interesting because I mean, I'm fundraising for the business right now, and we had peak alt protein in like 2021, 2022,
Mm.
where there was so much excitement around the space and so much hope and optimism and an influx of investors to this alt protein category that didn't understand food and didn't understand how it scales, and that it scales slower than software, and that it's really low margin. And so all of these companies in our category, that were fundraising at that time, raised a lot of money at really high valuations, and then couldn't meet their milestones. And we've had this really massive consolidation in our space. And so now being in the market fundraising, I've had over 100 no's already. And there's people that won't even take a meeting because it's, alternative protein. And there's kind of like this like big black X on the category for unfortunately what's happened in the past. And so just like the way I think that you can't sell to consumers on sustainability, right? It's a nice to have if you
Hmm.
make it really easy for them and make the threshold really low, but consumers won't pay more for sustainability. It's just like with investors, just because it's a nice climate solution or has a really nice sustainability story, they don't care. It's like, well, how are you going to make money? What are unit economics look like? How do you scale this thing? And
Hmm.
is there really a consumer demand for it? And so, I feel like having to, raising 2 rounds of financing where we could sell on the story and the vision and how we're going to basically preserve humanity on this planet has now shifted more to, these are our metrics. This is how we scale. This is how we continue to unlock, right, the commercial side of it. And these are the value props. And this is why chefs are excited and interested. So I feel like it's like two things can be true, right? You can have this incredible impact on the planet and in the world, but you can also have this really viable business solution and something um, that can really support these other businesses and just simplifying things for them, reducing their risk, giving them better quality, better product. So it's like both can be at play here. It's not
Hmm.
either or.
So if the listeners here are kind of excited like I am and want to be supportive, what kind of restaurants are you interested in being introduced to, and investors? let's start with the restaurants because you mentioned a few things that are on my mind when I'm thinking of introductions, like things like scale are top of mind. Are you looking for restaurants only in Chicago and what size? And
Sure. So we launched in Chicago because that's where we are, that's where the manufacturing is. We can support that. But now that we've identified how to ship, we don't have to ship overnight. We used to ship everything overnight. Now that we've done our time and temperature testing, we can ship ground to most of the US within 2 days, and keep it within temperature. So now that opens up the entire country, which is great. And because of our limited volume capacity today, we have been focused on more fine dining restaurants, but groups with smaller chains, like 5 to 10, concepts within their hospitality group, we can support that. Um, when I think about the larger distributors like Cisco's and Dot Foods and those larger guys, we wouldn't be able to support that kind of business today, not until we're at like the next level, so commercial scale. But absolutely introductions to fine dining shops or concepts that are anywhere from like 5 to 10 units would be really great for us. And we found too that restaurants that already have a seafood dish on the menu where Aqua can kind of like come in to play there, whether it's like the vegan option or as its own dish, that I think works really well. Or concepts that already have, maybe a plant-based option on the menu today. Maybe they have, an impossible or a beyond option, and they're already kind of believers in alternative proteins, or they have a consumer base that comes in for those specific items. So I think, kind of when we suss out who makes sense for us to call on, it's kind of like, do they check some of these boxes for us? Like, what's that right customer archetype?
mm-hmm.
But I think, the fine dining segment has served us really well because not only did these chefs feel the pain firsthand of the decreasing supply and this increased cost, where some of them have completely taken scallops off the menu, for example, because scallops are now over $50 a pound. And you can't always pass that on to the consumer. At some point, consumers just aren't going to pay for it or order it. So they feel that pain, but also chefs are really the storytellers of food. They love to work with these new and novel ingredients. They love to be the first. They love like to see innovation and experiment with it. And so it's so cool to see chefs just kind of light up when they try our product for the first time, and they're like, how did you do this? Like how on earth did you recreate this?
Oh,
Um,
cool.
and then watching them transform it into something, they can elevate our ingredient so much more than I ever could in a kitchen. And I think just having that partnership to be able to kind of share our narrative, share our story, share our why, but also introduce it to consumers in this new and interesting way is really fascinating. And it just kind of helps elevate our brand and our product. So I absolutely love the focus has been on this like fine dining channel, but I know long term for us to continue to grow and thrive, like we're going to have to scale up more and get our product in some of these larger distributors and also bring down our cost so that we can be more you know accessible to the rest of the population.
Totally. Like, forgive me, but over here, I'm like, I can't wait till I can put you in a poke bowl, like just
Yes.
that sounds exciting because sometimes I love to order the tuna, but I think about the mercury. So, like, and I mean, think about like pregnant ladies who want to order some, like, have that sushi moment again, but like can't. Yeah. So, yeah,
Yes,
sorry.
exactly. Everyone we've interviewed, so we've had many pregnant women tell us the first thing they miss when they're pregnant is sushi. And it's like the first meal, or lunch meat is a big one too, but sushi, like that's the thing that people miss the most.
It's definitely what I missed. And I think part of it is it's so experiential. Like,
Mhm.
sushi just for most of us feels like you're having a fun night with the girlfriends or you're out on a date. It's a special night at sushi, like.
Huh?
So, yeah, that would be wonderful to not have to eliminate that.
Yep. Now you can sub in aqua.
That'd be great. So, you talked about the restaurants you're looking for. Now, I know you're onto fundraising right now. So, what should we be able to share here with the audience in case there's someone who knows someone?
Sure. So we're raising our Series A. Can I share all of the?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Okay, so we're raising 7.5 million, and we've got already half of the round committed. So looking for a lead that can set the terms. Check size somewhere between like 2 and 3 million. And ideally, someone who um, invests in food and climate. So an investor that understands food really well, um, maybe formerly operators, but someone that really understands food and also the climate impact, because everything we do is kind of through that climate lens.
Hmm.
So I think just, yeah, just really smart, just smart investors in this space um, who recognize the need and want to put their money to work in a company again that is like not just a climate solution, but also a real business solution.
I love that. Wonderful. And I'll make sure that this episode comes along with like links and of course you know to your website and everything. And how about the oceans and like let's just imagine a few years from now, I mean, what else needs to be happening? I love that this idea came from having that personal experience scuba diving and seeing the tangible like what's actually happening in the world and in different places
Yeah.
and how it looks so different.
Yeah.
But beyond changing, what do people need to be aware of that we wouldn't be thinking of, but
Sure.
that since you're in the space?
Yeah. Well, I think, I mean, I always tell people if you don't know anything about the health of our oceans, watch Seaspiracy. I think it unlocks all of the just some of like the bad practices and the very little traceability in the space. And something maybe more uplifting like chasing corals or octopus teacher, like the reasons why we want to protect this, right? And save our oceans. But yeah, I mean, there really is very little traceability within seafood. And there's a really interesting podcast I listened to. Um, I'm blanking on the name of it right now. I'll have to search it and share it with you after, but it looks at just kind of the overfishing of our waters. But I think that there's a lot that can be done. And I hate to say like we need more government regulation, but in the case of this, we kind of do.
Hmm.
And it's just, um, I don't know. I'll have to send you some things to read because there's just some really just terrible like practices and slave labor and things that just go on that I don't want to badmouth anyone or any industry, but it's like the more you know, and knowledge is power, right? So it's like the more you know about the space, I think it just kind of helps open your eyes to maybe why it is important to understand like where your food comes from and why it is important to kind of look at these other solutions and right just understand more about this space and kind of what's happening. And we all vote with our dollars, right? We're all consumers, and so um, yeah, I think just putting your money to products that you can feel good about and just know where they come from is important.
Hmm. A product that reminds, like I'm thinking about them as we talk, C to C. I don't know if you've heard of
Mm,
them, the glasses company.
yes.
And
Yeah.
for my birthday, like 2 years ago, I bought myself some glasses from there, and I just loved like that full circle of everything that they use, and they employ people in different parts of the world to pick up trash out of the ocean, and
Yeah.
then they use certain elements from that trash to turn it into sunglasses, so essentially using recycled and repurposed material and that's like meant to be like a kind of on par with like a trendy sunglass level of things, and there's celebrities that have worn them, and I love that because like every time I get those out I'm like, oh, I just love the full circle
Yeah.
of
You
that
feel good about it.
product,
Yeah.
and they actually really look cute. And so I feel like and those are again like examples like C to C and like Aqua, where there's success in terms of like what you're offering for the planet and the meaningful things that are done in terms of shifting the way we behave. But then also the fact that it's, with Aqua especially, and hearing about the impact for restaurants, it's incredible that it's a business solution, and companies like yours are absolutely the unlock to shifting from like the death economy concept to the life economy, because it's not just going to happen when we say, yes, everything needs to get regulated or we all should just be better, people aren't going to should be better until until they're incentivized to do so. And
Yeah.
when you're aligning incentives the way that you are, just naturally through offering a product that can do so, that's what makes change happen. So it's incredible that you've unlocked that.
Thank you. No, I wholeheartedly agree. And I think too, I think about how just the EV movement and how that unlocked more consumer adoption was when there were like these tax credits, right? Or building
Right.
infrastructure for charging. And, you think about food, it's so hard. We have, small startups scaling up and creating these solutions. And of course, they're very costly and they've only been privately funded to this point. But if we had more funding going into these solutions through the government, which the DoD has actually done a really amazing job in creating grant opportunities for folks working in alternative proteins. Um,
Wonderful.
but if we had more of the solutions, it would be more cost effective, and we could bring the solutions to consumers where it is more accessibly priced and maybe even undercuts the price of conventional proteins. But when you think about, the meat or the dairy industry, it's so heavily subsidized. It's just not
Mhm.
apples to apples. So I think
Right.
it's going to be, we don't have mass consumer adoption today. We've definitely gotten there in alternative milks. I think,
Hmm. You're right.
nut-based milks have about 30% household penetration in the US. And I think, yes, alt dairy has been just very successful in our country. And I think seafood will get there. I think meat and seafood will get there. It's just going to take more time and just, yeah, just more incentives, like you were saying, just more consumer incentives and really getting that alignment and understanding that deep need, right? Why would someone choose this over the conventional counterpart?
Right. Right. Oh, that's so, yeah, well, keep doing what you're doing. It's a really wonderful thing. And I'm so pumped for you guys that the incentives are there and that you can tell that story, especially as you're going into this round of funding as a more mature company with a product in a restaurant and things like that. So you have not just the dream to sell, but the business story. That's so great.
Thank you.
Bravo.
Thanks,
Well,
Steph.
thank you so much for your time today, Brittany. And is there any other way, anything else we can leave listeners with, things that could support Aqua or anything else we should know?
I would say go check out our website, aquaculturedfoods.com. You can follow us, and we have a pretty fun Instagram, so you can go follow us there at Aqua Cultured Foods. But yeah, or go check out some of the restaurants we're in and ask for the aqua
Definitely.
product.
Yeah, I would love that. Come to Chicago and have a
Yes.
Trudeau sometime. That would be
Uh-huh.
delightful. Okay, everyone, go to that restaurant. What is it one more time?
Medalia.
Mama Delia in
Hmm.
Chicago, or as of like next week when they open the
Matilda.
other one,
Huh?
Matilda in Chicago. Excellent. Okay. Thank you so much for your time and everything you're doing, Brittany. This is so fun to get to hear
Thank
more
you.
about.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Expanders Podcast, presented by The Skinny Platform. You can catch more episodes and be notified of newly released episodes by following us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or subscribing on YouTube. For more information on the Expanders Podcast and The Skinny Platform, visit our website, www.theskinnyplatform.com.